Hello and welcome everyone to a new video. In this one I'm covering the use of the non-normal electronic checklist in the Boeing 777. As always, be advised that this video is for home entertainment only and not intended for real-world use. In a prior video I covered how to use the normal checklist system, and if you haven't seen that yet, on the top right corner I've put a link to that video, and I would advise you to watch that first if you haven't already done so. So the non-normal electronic checklist system is a little bit more complicated than the normal checklist system and also needs to be used very carefully. Otherwise you can quickly get into a wrong path with all its negative consequences. On the EICAS display you will see mainly three different messages, either warning, caution or advisory. However, there's also so-called communication messages and memo messages. Let's start with the highest priority message, which is of course the warning message, which is red in color and always comes with an oral alert like this one. Or like this one. It's important to note that these warning messages on the EICAS can't be cancelled and they remain visible even when you press the cancel recall button on the display select panel. So only when the condition that caused the warning message is removed, the message blanks. Next is the caution message in amber, and this also always comes with an alert, like this one. Next is the advisory message, also in amber. Now that one does not come with an oral alert, and also no caution lights are shown. One key difference is that the advisory messages are indented by one space. Communication messages, for example, FMC or ATC or cabin, always come with an oral alert, which sounds like this. The last kind of messages you'll see are the so-called memo messages. It's a crew reminder of a normal selected condition like auto brake or APU running. A very important symbol that you will see on the EICAS is the rectangular symbol, which indicates that there are procedural steps that need to be followed, usually via a checklist. And once the procedure checklist is completed, it will say that on the dedicated checklist itself on the bottom, then the rectangle is actually removed. EICAS alert messages are displayed in three different priority levels: warning, caution and advisory messages. And of course, the warning levels are always shown on the highest level, followed then by the caution and then by the advisory messages. Now, it's very important to understand that within the respective priority level, so let's say cautions, there is no prioritization within that level. So let's say you have three caution messages with accompanying procedures, then the pilot will have to choose which one has the highest priority. Also noteworthy is if you look at the non-normal checklist menu on the left-hand side here at the picture, you can see that the advisory messages are also indented by one space. So here as well, you can quickly identify if it's a warning, caution, or an advisory message. Now, needless to say that here, in this example, the fire APU as a warning has the highest priority, and of course, this would be the first procedure that the pilots would do. However, with the advisory messages, either hydraulic pressure primary right or fuel pump right aft, it's up to the pilots to decide which one of those procedures to do first. Now, let's go through these procedures in practice. First up, we'll get a left engine fire. So here it comes. Here's the warning, including the warning bell. You can see the message fire engine left, including a rectangle, meaning that there is a procedure with that. However, first of all, we have to do a couple of memory items. So left auto throttle arm switch off, left thrust lever idle, left fuel control switch cut off, and left engine fire switch pull. Fire light shown, so rotate to stop and hold for 1 second. And here's a very nice feature of the checklist system. Whenever you have some time that you have to wait, a timer is automatically started for you, and you'll see that in the top right corner. And that is time for the fire extinguisher substance to do its work. And then once the 30 seconds is over, the timer becomes amber to remind you that you have to continue with the checklist. So we waited for the 30 seconds, and you can see the gray box means it's an open loop item, so we have to click that. It's not self-sensed. Continue to page 2. Click on page 2. And there we have a question. Fire engine message stays shown, yes or no. In our case, it's no. And now you can see that the next item, left engine fire switch, rotate to other stop and hold for 1 second, has become cyan because there's no need to perform this action anymore. So the electronic checklist system has already kind of overridden this item for you. And also the next item, APU selector, APU if available, start then on, has already been performed previously, so the APU is already running. Hence, as it's a closed loop item, the system sensed the APU is already running, and so it ticked it off automatically and put it into a green color. Next item, the transponder mode selected TA only. You can see there is no gray tick box next to it that we can tick ourselves. And so we have to put a transponder mode selected TA only ourselves. And once that's done, the checklist item becomes green. Next item is a open loop item. Again, we have to tick that ourselves to make it become green. Next is a question if we did the landing using flaps 20. In our case, yes. And here's something we have to be careful with now, because it has already overridden the lower item there with landing using flaps 30, which does make sense. However, now we have to make sure that we don't skip the item ground proximity flap override switch to override. And this is a closed loop item, as you can see. So we have to do that first to make this item go green. And then we also have to read the note, use flaps 20, read 20 for landing, and flaps 5 for go around. That's an operational note. I will get to that later, what that actually means. But again, you have to be so careful not to skip items and then at the end wonder why the checklist does not give you the checklist complete icon. Now we just select flap override to override, and we can see the item has become green, and at the end it says checklist complete. Okay, let's do another example. Here we have several warning and advisory messages. Again, the warning has the highest priority, so the fire APU message is on top, and this will be obviously the first checklist that we're going to do. Pressing the checklist button here brings up the primary menu where we can select which checklist to do first. And of course, we're going to do the fire APU checklist first of all. We're going to click on that. And then read condition, fire is detected in the APU. And now we have a open loop item. We have to pull the APU fire switch and rotate to one side. Hold it for a second. Now it's going to take a few seconds for the agent to be discharged. And then again, it's not self-sensed, so we have to tick that box once we've performed the item. But again, you need some patience with that. Here we go. Here's the APU bottle discharged. And then we can tick that box off. And also we can see the fire warning, APU fire warning has blanked. So the next question, fire APU message stays shown, yes or no. We can tick that no. The plan to land near suitable airport has been overridden automatically. And here it says inhibited checklist APU shutdown. And so if that message was shown on the EICAS, it would just be a message APU shutdown without a rectangle next to it. Because again, that checklist has already been automatically inhibited by the system. And again, very important, at the end, it says checklist complete. So now if we press again on the bottom right icon, non-normal, it will bring us back to the selection menu if there's more than one checklist still available. And here we have to decide ourselves which one of those checklists is more important to us. And I think in our case, it's obvious that we would do the hydraulic pressure primary left first of all, One missing fuel pump isn't really that critical. So let's select the hydraulic pressure primary left. And it says condition pump pressure is low. And again, open item that we have to perform, left engine primary switch to off. And now it's self-sensed it's off. Note left thrust reverser may be inoperative. And that note is deposited into the notes section, which has to be looked at prior to your descent items, so descent preparations, and before reading the descent checklist. But we'll get to that later. And again, very important, at the bottom it says checklist complete. And since the button non-normal checklist is still there, we click it, and now only one checklist is remaining, and so it'll open that automatically for us. We're going to perform that item as well, right after fuel pump switch off. It's a closed loop item, so it's going to go green automatically after we have put the switch to off. And now again it says checklist complete. And at the bottom right corner now, you can see there's no non-normal button remaining, i.e. that tells you that there's no more non-normal checklists available. That is also being told to you by the EICAS, showing you there is no more rectangles next to these messages, and so there's no more procedures for you to do. So now let's come to that button notes. It says operational notes, and here you can see all the items that we just previously had in the checklists that have an operational impact, especially for the approach, landing, or missed approach. So here we have notes saying right thrust reverser may be inoperative, and also note left thrust reverser may be inoperative. And of course, that does have an impact on our landing stopping distance performance. So in our landing performance calculator, we would have to select both of these reversers off to account for that condition. Let's do one more exercise. Here we're going to get a AC bus right failure, which has some follow-up failures, which will appear as time goes on. You can already see some more advisories popping up here. And you can see, so we have one caution message, electric AC bus right, and there are a couple of advisor messages below, and again advisory because it's indented by one character, and the advisories do not have an oral alert. Highest priority is the ELIC AC bus right message, so we'll go through that checklist. It has 2 pages, but let's start out first by reading the first line there. Condition: the AC bus is not energized. Objective: to restore power or use the APU to supply another source of power. Closed loop item: attempt only one reset. So we should do that. I'm going to go to the overhead panel, look for the correct button, right generator control off, and then on. And it's a closed loop item. It ticks off itself, becomes green. Then it asks us if the AC bus message blanks, and the answer is no. So then we have the closed loop item with APU start, then on. It says inhibited checklist ELIC gen off right. And now we have to wait until the APU is running. And depending on your altitude, this could take some time. And so we just have to be patient for now. Now, as the APU starts up, we can see the main battery discharge checklist has just disappeared because the battery charger is actually getting powered again. Now we have APU running, continued page 2. Now we can see on the 1, it has become green in color, telling us that on the first page we've done all the items. Go to page 2, ELIC AC bus message blanks. Answer is no. And we click that, and then attempt only one reset, right bus tire switch off, then auto, closed loop item. So look for that button, off, then back on. It has sensed that as being performed. Again, question, ELIC AC bus message blanks, yes or no? Answer is no. And so now the checklist is complete. And we can see that there's 2 inhibited checklists. window heat and hydraulic pressure primary center 2. And on the EICAS, we can see that those rectangles next to those mentioned checklists have disappeared. So if we now click on the field non-normal on the bottom right corner of the display, that checklist now is being called up. We're going to read hydraulic pressure demand left, condition, demand pump output pressure is low when commanded on. We have to do an item, left ELIC demand pump selector on. Look for the hydraulic panel, there it is. There's the rotary selector, put that to on. Hydraulic pressure demand message stays shown, yes or no? Well, it still stays shown, so we're going to click yes. And then it says left ELIC demand pump selector back to off. Again, closed loop item, self-sensed. And there again we have checklist complete. Interestingly enough, there's no notes available. So the notes button there is not visible. Hence, there's nothing to consider for the approach. Being the EICAS, we can see there's no more rectangles. Everything has been considered and nothing more to do here. So we cancel the messages. So those were some examples how to use the electronic checklist system with non-normals. Now I have one more thing for you guys. I hope you're not too exhausted by now. But one important thing is the so-called unannunciated checklists. And you can see here in the non-normal menu, it incorporates things like ditching, evacuation, fuel jettison, volcanic ash, overweight landing, just to name a few. And needless to say, these are obviously checklists that can't be sensed and triggered automatically by the system. So let's do an example here. Let's assume we have a non-time critical issue where we have to return to the departure airport, but we are above max landing weight. So to get the aircraft below max landing weight, we want to jettison some fuel. So let me show you here in the aircraft where you'll find that menu. So let's first press the checklist button on display system panel. And then we have the non-normal menu button, top right corner. We will click on that. And on the top, we see unannunciated checklists button. Click on that, and there you have that selection. Then you have to search a little, and on the left side, pretty much near the bottom, you will find fuel jettison. We select that, and we can have the dedicated checklist. That was a lot to cover here. I hope you've been able to follow to this point. If you have some questions, post them down in the comment section below. And if you have liked this video, you would do me a huge favor if you would push that like button. That helps the channel tremendously. Thank you so much for that. Until the next video, as always guys, stay safe and I wish you all happy landings.